So, can Ben Carson survive his massive campaign shakeup? The Powerhouse Roundtable is here to take on that very big question. With me, Alex Castellanos, chairman of Purple Strategies and founder of NewRepublican.org, Democratic strategist and CNN political commentator Van Jones, national political columnist for Yahoo News Matt Bai, and Alice Stewart, former communications director for Mike Huckabee for president. And Alex, I want to start with you. I saw you sort of furiously taking notes during that interview. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the Good Doctor's campaign needs a doctor. It's in serious trouble, and that's important for a couple of reasons. He was the cap on Ted Cruz. And as he is diminished, Cruz is unleashed, which I don't think is very healthy for the Republican Party. But Carson is still the soul of the Republican Party in many ways. He's kind of the moral and spiritual leader. That's an important thing. But, you know, once consumers buy a product, take it home, try it, and then decide, not happy with it, and put it back on the shelf, they're not likely to go back and buy it again. It's going to be very hard for Dr. Carson to medically revive his campaign.
And Alice, this was you 2 weeks ago. You were the communications director for Mike Huckabee. You stepped down. So what do you make of this?
Well, here's the thing. Ben Carson has had a tremendous record, a tremendous history as a surgeon in the medical community. Had a phenomenal start in the presidential campaign. There's no doubt about that. But at this stage of the game, 1 month out from the Iowa caucus, this is not what you want to be talking about. And you can get a sense how he's running his campaign, how he would possibly do in the White House. And with a shakeup like this, it's not good.
Matt Bai, can he survive? People have cleaned house before, but probably not quite so close to the caucuses.
One of my favorite stories from my book about 1988 is when Gary Hart gets back in the race at the end in 1988, and he gets 0% in Iowa. And Martin O'Malley is actually with him on his campaign. He's his campaign aide, and O'Malley said to him, you know, he apologized. I was supposed to run Iowa for you. And Hart says, Martin, this was not an organizational problem. You know, what Ben Carson has is not an organizational problem. He hasn't met the bar that voters have for someone ready to be the commander-in-chief and the president. And I think, you know, you can do all the shakeups you want at this late date.
But at what point people thought he would be just fine.
Well, listen, you've seen this before, you know, in the 2012 cycle. You know, you have a flavor of the month. The one person he needs to fire on his campaign is Ben Carson. That's the reality. I mean, he had a shot. He was in the lead. But when you can't tell the difference between hummus and Hamas, you're not going to be able to survive in a presidential campaign. There's a level of narcissism here, and you saw it in the interview.
I disagree.
You saw it in the interview. He was happy to talk about all these internal details. Here's a guy that spent most of his career telling people, take personal responsibility. He spent the past several days blaming his staff and the media instead of blaming himself.
I disagree. I think he's certainly a little lost. He didn't talk about fixing the big problem, which is people want a president as big as our fears and as strong as our adversaries right now. And he doesn't seem to be that. He didn't address that. But to say that it's narcissistic on his point, he got in because he thinks America needs a moral renewal. And it's almost a spiritual cause. And I think that's a good and decent thing and has a place in the Republican Party.